Well, off we go into a new season. I want to say a word of applause for Dan. You know, I get a thorn in my finger, and I'm going to stay home if I can. Dan injured himself biking, much like Reggie did not long ago, which just convinces me that exercise is a terrible idea. I haven't broken my hip. So we're talking in the month of June about relationships. Sometimes people ask, Pastor, how do you decide what you're going to talk about on Sunday morning? And the answer is sometimes I just ask. What do people need in their faith life? And the reply came back as we prepared for this summer is relationships. Because relationships are hard and relationships matter. I was talking with one of our confirmation students about who God is this week. About who we believe God is, right? And we can say lots of things about who God is. God is creator. God is the one who came first. God is the Father of Jesus. God is Holy Spirit. And then we got on this weird thing, right? Like God is somehow the same as Jesus, right? Like that's the whole Christian thing right there. And as a confirmation student, it's a hard thing to get your head around. God is Trinity, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Does anybody have a great explanation for the Trinity? No volunteers? Yeah?
3 legs for a stool.
3 legs on a stool. That works. That's a great starting place. It's a little bit of heresy, but it's not bad. But most explanations of the Trinity are a little bit of heresy, right? Because we can't fully understand who God is as God exists in eternity, right? I'm just a little guy on the face of this earth for, maybe 80 or 90 years. A God who has existed for eons, throughout eternity, throughout the cosmos. I can't get my head around that. But we say that God is Trinity, that God is 3 in 1. And so what we can know about God, what we can say about what that means, is that somehow, from the beginning of everything, before the beginning of everything, God existed in a relationship. God didn't live alone. Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. God is a community. God is a family. God is a neighborhood. God is a relationship from the beginning of time. And so when God creates us in God's image, God creates us for relationship. God creates us for community. God creates us for neighborhoods and families and to be bound together. We've read that before, right? In Genesis 1, that whole God makes light and it's good, and God makes ground and water and it's good, and God makes animals and it's good, and God makes humans and said, it's not good yet. I need another one so that they can be together. And then God says that we are good. We are created for the gift of community. And we're really bad at it. We are really bad at living our lives in relationship with one another, in community with one another. Now, we read 1 Corinthians 13 over and over and over again in the life of the church, and most often people read it and they think about, weddings and marriages. But Paul's not talking about weddings and marriages. When we talk about love, we most often think about, terrible Hallmark movies. And perhaps the person we've chosen to live our life with. But God isn't talking about that when he says, love your neighbor as yourself. We have such a teeny tiny idea about what love is. And love is so much more. If we're going to learn how to live in relationships, we're going to have to reclaim this idea of what it means to love. Love cannot be tied to just, dating apps and marriage. Although there's love there too, we hope. Right? When I think about love, I'm always reminded of my friend Derek, who spent about a year of his life being intentional about saying to the people in his life, I love you. To his male friends and his female friends, to his children, to his neighbors, to the people at church. I think about that because I'm not good at that. How can we expect to love one another if we can't say it? If we can't say to our best friend, I love you, without feeling weird about it. If we can't say to our neighbor who has helped us in times of need, I love you, how can we live it? It's not a bad place to start when it comes to rebuilding relationships in this world. We have to tell people how we feel or it doesn't work. Interesting thing I've learned in all my years as a pastor is people will come to me and they'll say, Pastor, you know, I was in the hospital last week and you didn't come to visit me. I'll say, I didn't know. They'll say, you didn't come and visit Mom. She was having a hard time this week. And I'll say, how did I know she was having a hard time? Oh. Or I'll find myself saying, you know, Megan, I wish that you would have done more for Father's Day for me. Even though I'm not your dad, I'm a dad, and I love presents. And she'll say, how was I supposed to know? People don't know what we need if we don't tell them. People don't know how we feel if we don't tell them. And so the first step of rebuilding relationships in our lives, of rebuilding community in our world, is telling people that they matter to us. Telling people that they're important to us. Picking up the phone and calling our friends. Texting our friends. Letting them know. Because at the heart of this thing that we call relationship is this weird word of love. So what is love? All right, so let's try this again. Who can give me a definition of love? What is love? The immense liking of somebody. Right? A feeling of immense like. Lot of like. Love is lot of like. That's pretty good. Connection? What else? Compassion? Acceptance? Interesting. See, here's where we break down. We make love a feeling that just lives inside of us. We turn love into this thing that you just either have or don't have. And so when Jesus tells us to love our neighbor, we think, well, but I don't. So, oh well. Because love is a feeling, right? And you either have it or you don't. It's either on or it's off. You either immensely like somebody or you dislike somebody. And you can't just change how you feel. You know, our hearts aren't light switches that we can turn on and off. And so we make love this feeling that either you have or you don't have, and then all of a sudden, look, we have no obligations anymore. I either love someone or I don't. What can I do about it? Oh, well. Love is an action, friends. Love is a series of actions. Love is a choice that we make in our lives. Yes, toward the people who live in the same house in us, but also toward our neighbors and our friends and the politicians we don't like and the person who cut us off in traffic and the neighbor whose tree keeps growing over our yard and dropping leaves in our yard, right? Love is a choice. It's not a feeling that either turns on or turns off. It's a choice that we make again and again and again and again every day. This is why so many marriages fail after the first sort of 3 or 4 years. Because if love is just a feeling, well, feelings change. And I guess if feelings changed, let's just, oh well, what can you do? But love is a choice. Love is doing the dishes when you don't want to. Love is, let's go back, right? Love is patient and kind. Love is choosing to be patient, choosing to be kind, choosing to be humble and not arrogant, choosing to not be jealous, choosing to look for the good of the other instead of what's best for yourself. Love is choosing to not be irritable. These things don't just happen. Why do we live in a world that is increasingly divided from one another? Why do we live in a world where we can't even talk to one another? Why do we live in a world where there are so many broken relationships in our lives? Because we are not choosing love. Not the feeling, not some heartwarming Hallmark moment, but the hard work of love. Jesus says in Matthew to love your enemies. It's not just the people we immensely like. It's not just the people we have in our lives and we choose to surround ourselves with. Love your enemies. And interestingly, when Jesus says, love your enemies, he pairs it with an action. Love your enemies and pray for them in Matthew 5. If you have an enemy, write their name down and start praying for them every day. That's a first place to start with love. It's awful hard to hate somebody that you pray for their well-being every day. If you have an enemy or somebody that you greatly dislike, write down their name and pray for them on a daily basis. Pray for God's love and mercy to be shown in their lives. It'll become a lot harder to hate them. I promise. I promise. Love your enemies and pray for them. Love is patient and kind. It isn't jealous. It doesn't brag. It isn't arrogant. It isn't rude. Pastor gets in trouble sometimes. I'll ask Layla what she thought of a sermon on Sunday morning. She said, "You said the same thing you always do, Dad. Blah, 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 love." If love is just a feeling, all of our talk about it is nonsense. If love is just an emotion, all the emphasis that Jesus places on it is nonsense. But listen to what Paul says. I don't care how great you are. You can be the Mother Teresa of the woodlands. But if it isn't with love, it doesn't matter. If it isn't with compassion, it doesn't matter. How important is it? Faith, hope, and love. These three remain. And the greatest of these is love. I don't care if you say the creed right. I don't care if you memorize the right version of the Lord's Prayer. The greatest of these is love. Wouldn't it be something? Wouldn't it be something if the Christian church in America wasn't known for being judgmental, wasn't known for being angry and condemning, wasn't known for being closed-minded, or even for being theologically right, as much as I like to be theologically right, but instead was known as compassionate, as loving. Invite you as we think about what it means to heal our relationships, what it means for us to grow and love to start with something simple, right? Like you can't do everything at once. I know that you aren't going to change your life between now and next Sunday, right? Like we don't work that way. Two things. I invite you to tell the people you love that you love them. Don't let it be a freaking mystery, people. And I invite you to pray for the people that you find hard to love. Tell the people you love them. And pray for the people whom you find hard to love. That's a foundation. That's a starting place. We'll come back next week and we'll talk some more about what it means for us to be better together and to live with healthy relationships in this world.